My name is Jackie Utter, and I have Debbie Jarman with me here. We are going to be talking about A Year in PowerSchool. I do have the recording on so that we can record this later. There's about 8 of us on right now. I'm sure people will be jumping in. So for those of you that are here, if you could please raise your hand within the webinar so I can know whether you can hear me or not. Oh, yay, I see some hands. That's perfect because just a second ago I hung up on y'all, so I apologize for that. Okay, so let me explain a little bit about how this is going to work this afternoon. We have about 3 hours, but we're not going to need all of the 3 hours, but we'll see how it goes. I'll be taking questions throughout the webinar through the question panel, so if you have any questions, please write them through there. We will stop along for questions as we go. This is more of a keep this for reference kind of PowerPoint. So even if we don't do a lot of looking in PowerSchool itself, you'll be able to take this document back with you and keep it and use it as a check mark for you, a checklist. It's just how things happen and what we need to do month by month within our PowerSchool lives. So I will say that I am presenting it along with Debbie, but it was not created by us. It was created by Region 4. On this first main screen, you should see the bit.ly. I've also added it to the chat, and I've also added it to the main screen when you came in. So please let me know through questions if you cannot get to that bit.ly. It is going to be definitely to your benefit to grab this for your future use. So I think we're going to get started. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Awesome. Okay, so Region 4 created this, and it was created between Debbie, Kim Provins, a bunch of Region 4 folks got together, and it is a timeline, and it is truly a working living document because things can get added or changed as time goes on, but generally month by month, time of the year happens. The same stuff goes on in PowerSchool, so this is just a way to kind of not forget things. So it looks like things are going to be repeated, and that's because things are repeated within PowerSchool. So let's see how far we get. So I want to thank Debbie and Kim and everyone else from Region 4 for sharing this with us. I am going to start with July and August. So we are actually going to start after EOY. So we're going to pretend that end of year has just finished and we are ready to open the curtain back up and let everybody in for the next school year. So the first few links that are on this page and what we're going to talk about is what do you do after end of year? So post EOY. For your purposes, there is a whole page dedicated to end of year on the NCSIS page. So I'm going to be showing that link to you a few times throughout this session. If you go to www.ncs-sis.org/EOY.html, it's a whole page related to just end of year information. So there's a lot of things that you need to be able to do, and you can go to that page to get some reference help. We can talk more explicitly about it, but this is more of things you need to do and where to find the information to help you. So after end of Y is done, so your year's been turned over to 17-18. We are using the new master schedule that we built. So obviously we need to start enrolling new students as they come in. We need to maybe withdraw students, transfer students out. The charters, you really need to make sure that the top level grade student before end of Y, you needed to make sure they were transferred out to one of your program schools as like a holding place. And then after end of year, you needed to physically transfer them out so that other schools can pick them up. So we need to make sure that that happens, and that's part of post-EOY stuff that goes on. So a couple of the documents that I'm showing here, one is a QRD on enrolling new students, one is a QRD on transferring them out. One thing I will say about enrolling new students is to make sure you have the NC in red on that page, because I want to make sure you're using the North Carolina student entry page and not a generic core PowerSchool, because we definitely need to have the North Carolina version of enrolling student pages. The the fourth block down checkbox talks about what date to use for your summer withdrawals or your no-show students, or whatever phrase you want to use. You need to have the same date for both the entry date and the exit date. And as a general rule, here it says to use 7/7. So you may need to be a little flexible with this based on when end of year actually gets done at the state and actually the curtain comes up. So we will tell you whether it's the 6th or whether it's the 5th and when it's available, and you guys can still use 7/7. But if something happens and it comes later, then obviously you use a date that is after the new year has begun. So 7/7, make sure you use the 4 digits for the year, and you should be having that same date for entry and exit. Okay. Talking about transferring students in and out. So there is the actual transfer student record process. And we have issues with that at certain times. Certain things happen. So if you have the cheat sheet in front of you, if you have the directions there in front of you for you newbies that are just beginning to use this piece, make sure that the student you are transferring out, so the outgoing school, needs to clear that scheduling info page. Make sure that their schedule is clear, the enrollments are gone, and then when they get transferred out of their school, can pick them up and use that transfer student record process to bring in all of their old enrollment records. So these two QRDs will help you with that process. So there's the student transfer cheat sheet, and then there's the student transfer record process itself. So that kind of starts us. I mean, we're really in the beginning of July. So in between going out to the pool and all that kind of stuff, we may be having to go back to work and doing some more scheduling. So just because the new year has started does not mean that everything in the master schedule is done. There are things that you will need to do, need to tweak. You may have to add a new section for a course. You may need to actually remove a section, things like that. So those pieces, now is the time to do that. You may need the walk-in scheduler to schedule students as they come in, if they are just coming to you in the July timeframe. And you also need to talk about staff. So scheduling also deals with teachers coming in. You may not have known who the staff was going to be when you're doing your master schedule build. So now you need to add new staff, and don't forget you need to inactivate the staff that's no longer there. So another good document is a QRD about adding staff members. So we tried to actually take this document and give you as much reference material and links to different things in different places. So in July, we're just beginning this type of day-to-day work. Debbie and I were talking, and she said when she first got started, she really just put everything, she wrote everything she did down every day on a calendar. So she knew what she did every day so that the next year, because the things you only do once a year, you don't really remember. And who can remember when you're doing so much stuff that you do? So this is another way of keeping track of what we do. We're keeping this kind of as a calendar for us. It's a good thing for you guys to have, just to keep your own in addition to this as well. The other thing that is a really good trick and a tip is to take a screenshot of some of the reports that you run so that you know what the criteria is on those report option pages, so you don't have to try and remember how it is that you set it up to get it to run. So that is just something to consider. In the NCSIS site, there is the scheduling side. There's a scheduling page. So just like above there was an EOI page, there's also a scheduling page within the ncsis.org website. And that will give you a list of all kinds of other documents to utilize in your live side scheduling piece. So we just started our year. We're in July. Still hot out. Still got stuff to do. So end of years happen. We need to make sure all our school setups are good before the school opens. So whether you're a data manager or you're an LEA coordinator, these are some of the things that you need to either work with your data managers on or make sure it is correct. Your school schedule. So basically that means the years and terms. It means your bell schedules. It means your calendar setup. It means your attendance conversions, all of those pieces. So these little check boxes will kind of remind you of all the little places to go and take a look. Luckily, the attendance codes and the categories, they come over, so you shouldn't have to enter them, but you should be taking a look to make sure they're still there and ready for use in the new school year. The attendance preferences, there's always a page I like to have people check. One is if you change from daily attendance to meeting attendance, which is period by period attendance, you're definitely going to need to modify those attendance preference pages. Or if you're going from meeting to daily, definitely check that. Check your full-time equivalencies, your FTEs. We need to have definitely one FTE, unless you have some kind of extenuating circumstance, but North Carolina says one FTE. Make sure that is listed in all your attendance conversion pages. Definitely know North Carolina is time today. Make sure that is set up correctly and not just code today. It needs to be time today. If you're going to be looking at your bell schedules. So obviously it was a little bit since you made your master schedule and now you're utilizing it. Take a look at those bell schedules. If you got a regular, your normal schedule, it's kind of hard for me to say that because what's normal, but the schedule that you use most of the time in your bell schedule is set, and make sure it has yes for your PMR, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. Look at your bell schedule. Look at your calendar setup. One of the things we've been seeing is that the people that are non-track schools, non-track LEAs even, that all those track check marks, they either all have to be unchecked or all checked. It has to be consistent all the way through, otherwise it messes things up. So when you do your calendar check, not only check for the dates and check your number of days that you have for in session, but make sure you check those check boxes within the calendar. Years and terms, definitely there is a QRD for that. The one that is listed on this screen, it actually has a percentage sign and the 20. So an underscore %20, you have to have those exact characters in there to grab that PDF. So that's just kind of a little tidbit right there. The other one that I think is really good is, and we actually had a webinar on it, was the Common PowerSchool Start of the Year Issues. A really good PDF to take a look at and grab. Definitely helps looking things up that might have gone wrong. And we definitely want to talk about the PMR and your calendar stuff. So I may get to it on this page a little bit. So I'm still in the July time frame, not really August yet, but look at your final grade setup, especially those of you that are going with PowerTeacher Pro. So if you're going with PowerTeacher Pro, you have to have the final grade terms set up. Otherwise, the teachers are not going to be able to see their classes in PT Pro. The ones that are still using PTG for this final year, you have a little bit of time yet for that, because it really don't need it till closer to the end of the first marking period, but it's now is a perfect time to make sure that that final grading setup is done. The dates must be concurrent. Dates are so darn important in PowerSchool. So at this point, we want to make sure that in our years and terms, there's no overlapping, and they do butt up against each other. You don't want any gaps in there. Just look at all of those types of things. Go ahead.
One thing that we do, and this is just our LEA, we've just found that it works well, is we ask our teachers to not actually set up their grade book as far as their assignments and attaching them to students for the first 10 days, because you're constantly redoing those rosters and reassigning students. And you're really doing them a favor, because it saves them from all of that cleanup. So we tell them, you know, hold off for the first 10 days, and then we give them the go-ahead once we feel like schedules are stable. And that really works out well, and it saves them a lot of headache. It saves us a lot of headache.
Yeah, that's perfect. So that's kind of what that third little block is telling us. Because the teachers can work in the grade book when stuff is opened again, just kind of have some communication with that and explain to them. If you tell them that it's just going to be worse, then most of them will tend to listen.
And the same is true with your LMS systems. I don't know how many are using Canvas or what system you're using, but Canvas also kind of makes the same recommendation, and it's pretty much for the same reason, because you're still adjusting and making sure that everything's correct, and it just saves a lot of doing and undoing and redoing when you have them to hold off those few days.
Perfect. Thanks, Debbie. Just because we're saying it here in July and August, it does not mean that we're not going to repeat this throughout the year. It says frequently check your grade book setups throughout the year. So it does make sense. Things sometimes change. If you had some weather days where you have to change some dates and term dates here and there, and just things in general, check that stuff. You don't want to be waiting until the last minute and have to redo a whole bunch of stuff because you waited too long to check it. So that's kind of what that kind of gives you, a little nudge in that direction. Check and change your dates for all the date-driven reports. So we're at the beginning of a new school year. Some of these system reports and the state reports are all date-driven. So make sure that they're ready to go with the new school year dates involved. And one of these options now is talking about checking your section attributes and your course attributes. So we talked about this in the morning session. So the course attributes obviously come from the course catalog, and then you make it your own the way you need it to be. And most of the course attributes, I have not all, so please bear with me when I say this. Some of the major ones filter to the section, but there are a lot of section attributes that need to be looked at and entered for some of the state reports, SAR and others that require those particular pieces entered. And it's at the bottom quarter, bottom eighth of that page of the section. When you open it up, it's under the North Carolina panel, and actually we can go there. Let's see if we can just jump in and, oops, not that. I'm at a high school. Is that where I want to be? Yes, that's where I want to be. So let me change. Ooh.
While she's looking for that, I don't know how many new data managers or coordinators we have listening, but the SAR has an exception that will show you those attributes that have not been checked. So that's a really good tool to use, and you don't have to wait until October to start running SAR. Start running it as soon as school starts. I think you can run it prior to that. We use it as an audit tool. Those exceptions really do help a lot in catching errors, especially at the beginning of the year when you're doing all of this setup work.
Thank you for that. So right now I'm at, and I'm sorry it keeps blacking out, I'm not quite sure what's up. So I'm at a school instance. This is a training database. It's not real stuff. I'm on the school page. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and I'm going to go to sections. And I'm just going to open up a section so I can show you where on the page you should be looking. I'm going to jump down to parenting and child development. That's a good course to look at, but we don't have any sections. I guess that wasn't a good one to check. Let's try personal finance. Great. Okay, why do I have no sections? Well, finally, I found one. Okay, so NC Math 1. Don't forget, this is just play data, so it may not be a real class. It may not be something that we're really touching. I clicked on the section number, so it brought up information about that section. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, and it's under the North Carolina piece, and you need to look at some of the extended information as well. So if it is an online class or if it's coming from NCVPS, you might need to put in the third party or the external provider. So you need to look at those. The delivery mode you need to take a look at. And as we go farther down, the course length needs to be in there. The how taken needs to be in there. This is information that the SAR it does need for sure. And like Debbie said, if you run the SAR and look at some of those exceptions, it will help you with that information, especially when you're adding new sections that you don't remember because you just did it months ago when you're creating your master schedule. So anytime you create a new section, it's a good thing to take a look at. All right, let me jump back into my PowerPoint. All right. Are we okay? I don't see any questions. I don't see anything happening. Are you guys, is it too early after lunch for you guys to be paying attention or what? You guys need some coffee? All right, I'm going to keep on going. All righty, so that talks about the section attributes. So that deals with some state reporting. The next piece says run a preliminary dropout list from the previous school year. So this is actually showing you an actual search. It is a compound search. It does two kinds of searches together in one. It is a / exit date greater than 8/29/2016 as an example, with a semicolon and exit code equals W2. So that front slash is going to tell you that it's going to bring in inactive students. Obviously, you want them because they're dropouts, right? It's looking for anybody who has an exit date that is later than 8/29/2016, and they have an exit code of W2. So this will help you get a dropout list. As far as other reports, there are object reports out there, there are letters, there are other searches. You can look in the system report area. There is items that talk about dropouts. It's definitely a good idea to keep a list of the dropouts as the year goes on, because some of them might return, some of the students might have a suspension. There's a lot of different things that happen. So if you can start collecting the data from now and keep up with it, it'll help you in the long run.
One thing that I do for myself so that I remember, especially on long-term suspensions, we don't like those, but we unfortunately have them. The 365-day suspensions especially, those are out of sight, out of mind for 365 days. So I take that suspension, the hearing letter or whatever document that I have, and I stick it in my calendar at the point in year where the student should return. So that way I know if the student doesn't show up, then I need to start researching and to see whether he's somewhere else or whether we should report him on the dropout report.
Yep. These are all awesome stuff, and I'm so glad that you're sharing all that stuff with us, because it's good.
We're living it.
Really is good. Okay. I'm still in July. We haven't got out of July and August yet. We're still working in the summer. Check for some missing student data. So we definitely need to have a lot of this data for what we need to collect. So look for their missing date of birth, missing gender, their federal ethnicity we need to have, the scheduling ethnicity, so those two different ethnic fields that we do collect. The FTEs, the full-time equivalencies, we got to make sure every student has one of those for sure. And we need to make sure the students that are in high school and 9th grade and above, they have a 9th grade entry date. This example says to use the date of 7/1 and then whatever year it happens to be. It's good to use something consistent. So it's a good thing to use July 1 and whatever year it happens to be. We definitely need to have that. I would, and it actually says here, export it as the school year progresses. You need to always check your new enrollment. So if you have a new kid that is coming to you as a 10th grader, make sure you know when it was that they first entered the 9th grade, because we need to have that information. There are reports that help us find information. There's a lot of searches you can do within PowerSchool. So one of the reports that's listed here is under system reports, under the SQL, the SQL, is students missing 9th grade entry date. So that's an easy report to run. If you wanted to do regular searches within PowerSchool, a lot of the times you want to look for stuff that is blank. And in order to do that, the format is whatever the field name is. So for example, date of birth, if the actual field name is DOB, then you're going to say DOB equals, and then leave it blank after that. Don't put anything there. Don't put a space. Don't put a tab. Don't put anything in there. And then hit search. It will find you all of the students that are missing whatever field name you put in for that search. We need to know whether they're missing a federal ethnicity. We need to know whether they're missing an FTE. So in that particular case, it would be FTE ID equals blank. And that will bring up all of the students that are missing an FTE code for them. So that kind of gives us a little bit of a reference spot to look. Anything?
I think we mentioned it. It's mentioned on a slide a little bit later on in the presentation, but one thing that our district does is I have the middle school data manager to go ahead and populate that grade 9 entry date for the 8th graders before, EOY. That way it's there, and then you can just like Jackie said, run these reports to check for the missing ones once the new year starts, as you have students transferring in from other places.
That's true. So yeah, it is good because most of them are going to be entering the date they enter ninth grade is the time that they are with you, but that's not always the case. So that's a very good, it's a good tip to have. All right, I'm still in July and August. This is something that should be done consistently. It helps you, believe me, it helps to run your school enrollment date. There are a couple different reports of SQL things that run scripts to search for issues, invalid enrollment dates, dates that overlap, things of that nature. So in this time during this time, July and August, go to your start page, look for invalid enrollment dates. So this particular example says field name equals entry date. So if your first day of school is 8/29 of 2017, you can say entry date greater than 8/29 of 2017, and you can look at all the kids who have a date that is not what you needed it to be. You could say not equal to 8/28, 8/29. I can't even get my name straight, my dates straight. So the bottom line is you need to look for those. There is a report that will tell you that invalid enrollment. So look at those. Look at the school enrollment audit report. That's the one that will show it to you. And that talks about school enrollment, not class enrollment. So this is the school enrollment audit. And use all of those power tools, all of those reports that are within PowerSchool to help you find that information. Use the class enrollment audit as well, section audit, and that'll be on the next page, I believe. Make sure your course codes are valid. So how many times do we change course codes throughout the state? And it happens. So within ncsys.org site, there is a page dedicated to courses. So if you want to look for the current course list, the spreadsheet, you can find it under ncsys.org/courses. And I'm not sure how many of you use homeroom. We know that our elementary schools, obviously, and a lot of middles and high schools actually use the homeroom field to bring their kids together long enough to do handouts, to hand out report cards or stuff that you need to do at the school level. So assign your homeroom at this time. A lot of people just do it by alphabetic. So like the first 25 kids or 30 kids, assign that homeroom field using the student field value. And there's a nice QRD that helps you with that. So that is found on NCSYS as well under the documents area, school info. And it's this time of year where you can run class rosters. I've always been trying to teach everyone is to make the teachers run their own. So they can, and I try and teach that. So we want to teach them to fish, not just give them the dinner. But if we have to run class rosters, we should be able to do that at this point in time of the season, and it's under system reports and class rosters. This is where one of the ones where I would take that screenshot of all that report criteria and make sure I have it in case I need to re-enter that criteria. The bottom of this page actually kind of talks about exactly what I've been just preaching about, is check and clean up the invalid enrollments all the time. Don't just do it at the last moment. That's school enrollments, that's section enrollments. A lot of kids come in the second day of school. So they were absent the first day, they come in the second day of school, but their class enrollments say, the first day of school. So you need to check all of that kind of information. Run the enrollment and the section enrollment audits all of the time. This even says every couple of days at the beginning of the year or at the beginning of the semester, and otherwise maybe just once a month kind of thing. Okay, so I really got into the enrollment audit and the section audit. All those dates are important. So first 10 days of school. We have some track schools that start in July. We have the rest of us starting toward the end of August sometime. So we're kind of getting closer to school starts, your first 10 days of school. We actually had a webinar on the first 10 days of school and a lot of discussion, obviously, on daily head count adjustment. So the daily head count adjustment is, it's still not great. There's always some kind of issues that we have with it. It's the beginning of every year, it seems. So you may have to make some of those adjustments manually to those students, but you definitely need to run it. Do not do a refresh. If you made changes, do not do the refresh during the day. That's what is breaking a lot of stuff lately. So wait until, let the system do their thing at night. You can make your changes during the day. So the bottom line is you may have to do manual attendance. So something manual has to happen maybe for the first 10 days. If your administration really wants it and they want it every day at a certain time, if PowerSchool can't give it to you automatically during the system, using the system, then you're going to have to find another way of getting around it. So during our other sessions, we talked about people shared their ideas. They kept a Google spreadsheet and people updated it that way. People just took paper attendance. That is another way. So you just have to do what you need to do. So if the adjustment process is not working properly for you, then either do it manually or do something paper. There is information on that, the daily head count. One is the manual process, and one of the other links is the QRD, and one is the entire guide. So that's why I wanted to talk about that part. Where you can find them is on ncsys.org/documents/school info. So within the school info, there are many different QRDs in that list. The other thing I want to talk about is using this set of PowerPoints. There are also a lot of links in the, what are they called? The speaker notes at the bottom of each slide. So in addition to just looking at these slides, you want to download the slides because there are a lot of speaker note information with other links. So I definitely take this with you for including all of the speaker notes. You're going to need to deal with the daily head count that first 10 days. So we are on August, but we are starting school. So that means PMR. We have to make sure our PMR is set up accurately and correctly. Definitely do it after your school begins. There are two pieces of it. One is the interval setup and one is the minutes. So there are two documents listed here. One is for the interval setup and the other is the QRD on the minute setup. So that happens at PowerSchool at the school level. Make sure you're doing those PMR intervals. I do want to talk about, while we're sitting here talking about PMR, I want to show you where it lives in the bell schedule. Very important. We've been seeing a lot of problems with this. Let me jump back to My system is not working very quickly. All right, let me change what I'm showing you so you can see it. Should be coming up. Cool. Okay, so I'm at a school level. I chose school on the left-hand side. I'm going to scroll down. You're looking at, under calendaring, I want to show you the bell schedule. So as we look, now this is play data, so don't forget this is just not real stuff. This is my regular day bell schedule. I'm going to click on the name of it. On this particular page, there is an option for use for PMR and SAR calculation of minutes. So your options are yes, no, and blank. So you definitely need to go through every one of your bell schedules and set one of your bell schedules, the one that is used most often, most every day, and mark that one the yes, use for PMR. The other ones you need to touch and make them say no. Don't leave them blank. What we've been finding is that a lot of people have been leaving everything blank. And they're saying, well, no one said anything. It must not be a problem. It is a problem. It skews your numbers because what it does, anything that is blank, it will combine them all and it will average all of those minutes. So if you have hour delays and you have early dismissals and it's going to average all those minutes, that number is not going to be a true picture of what it needs to be calculating. So definitely make sure that your bell schedule has one of these bell schedules set to yes. And the other ones really do need to be no and not blank. All right, that's my high horse for the moment. I can get off that. So on that same school setup page at the very bottom should be your PMR interval setup and your instructional minutes setup. So those are two things that we need to make sure are in place. Your 20 days, it will give you the place to put in the dates, and it will show you the number of days based on those starting and end dates. Okay. Any questions about that so far? All right. I'm going back. All right, so that's my PMR spiel for the moment. We're dealing with some summer grads possibly, so make sure that your summer graduates and your promotion and retention stuff is getting looked at. So look at the QRD for summer grads, the QRD for the promotion and retention. It's definitely things that you should be looking at. Another place to look is the Read to Achieve summer camp promotion and retention information. There's a lot of information on the documents page within ncsys.org under either school info or student info. One is for summer grads, one is summer promotion and retention. Definitely take a look at all of those that documentation. So that's happening right at the beginning of school, the first 10 days. PMR, bringing kids in, looking at the daily head count. Okay, August, started school.
I got there.
School, kids are in. Now we have to deal with class enrollment. So this is now the section enrollment that we're dealing with along with the school enrollment. Look and see if you have any kids enrolled in school but don't have any classes. That's possible. Look and see that all of the students that are counted in ADM should be counted in ADM. So what I'm saying is a student has to have a full schedule to be counted. Now it's not my place to look and see if everybody in the state has an MST1 or a VST1. However, you should be looking at your seniors that maybe have a late entry and an early leave day. Make sure they have enough minutes in their day to make them viable students to be an ADM so you can get your funding. Good time to do that right here at the beginning.
Our LEA, and this is just, just my district, but we require students to at least have a 50% of the day schedule because we're so small, we can't afford to lose those ADM dollars, so we don't let them take just one class. They have to be scheduled for 50% of the total day.
Awesome. Got to do what you got to do, right? It's a good time right now to look at your parent portal. Those pages should be up and available to the parents and the students. So you look at your parent and your student pages. And we need to start looking at athletic eligibility. So those fall sports. So there's a QRD on athletic eligibility. You need to enter that data, create your teams and put the kids on those teams so that we can track them. This is the time to do it. And I'm talking about all those little boxes on this particular page. Some of the different search commands we kind of threw here at the bottom. So if you wanted to see the number of classes that a student has, you can do a search that is asterisk number underscore of underscore classes. So that shows you the number of classes. You could say that less than 7. So if your full day is 7 and you do that search, it'll show you the students who are enrolled in less than 7 classes. You could do a search where it says asterisk not underscore enrolled in a period. How many kids are not enrolled in a period 2 class? So you can look that way as well. So those are just a little of the searches that you can find. There's a lot of QRDs on searching in PowerSource and in NCSIS. Check your schedules using SAR and PMR. So like Debbie was saying before, some of those, what are they called? The when you run your SAR and you look at all of the exceptions. I should not have had lunch today, I can tell you that. I can't finish a sentence. Look at those exceptions in the SAR and your PMR areas to help you with this. August is the time to make this stuff happen. Debbie, we made it to September.
We did.
Okay. State reports. So we had the PMR set up. September, we're starting to run it. So there's month number 1, so PMR 1. You run it after the first 20 days. You should have been looking at all the data before that 20 days is up. There's a document on a PMR cheat sheet. That's a QRD that will help you. Retention and promotion stuff is going to be happening now. You need to make sure that it's not all listed as errors for you. I don't have a PMR webinar created yet for this year. We're working on scheduling that, but there are previous PowerPoints, previous presentations, and previous webinars that have been posted on PMR. So Ozella has a lot of information for us there. I currently have a retention and promotion webinar scheduled for September 28th, and it runs from 1 to 3. So look at the training calendar on the NCSIS site, and you'll see which webinars are coming up. So in September, we need to start looking at this stuff. PMR 1, look at all your student admission statuses. So do a search for all students that are not MST1, just to make sure you're looking at them to make sure they have the right status. Look at all your fatal errors. And one thing that is going to be written in every one of these months that we do for PMR and SAR and others is we're telling you to save those exports of the PMR summary and the PMR detail. And this is just a good tip. After you run them, save those exports electronically so you keep them. It's just a good habit to get into. Run your retention and promotion report. And at this point in time, we want to make sure that if the proper students, maybe they should have been promoted after being retained due to Read to Achieve, or maybe they passed summer school and things have changed. So make sure all that information is fixed and appropriate before turning that information in. So that all happens in September.
And again, just a word of advice. Again, I don't know who's new, but I can tell you from many, many years of experience, you need to have a face-to-face conversation with the principal about retentions, just to make sure that what you're reporting is actually what happened in the reality. Inevitably, there'll be one that will be reported retained when in the truth they were not, or the reverse, they were retained and it's not showing retained in the system. So you do always want to have a communicate with the person that's making those administrative decisions before you submit that report.
Awesome, thanks. It's good to have an LEA person here and a data manager as well, and all of those kind of persons. That's awesome. So I'm still in September, and now we're going to start talking SAR. So we have a new SAR person this year. It is Penny May. She has started. We actually have 3 webinars scheduled on SAR. We have 2 on September 14th. We have a morning and an afternoon. You don't need to attend both. So one is from 10 to 12, one is 1 to 3, and we also have one in October, October 5th. So keep checking that training calendar. You'll see some other stuff being scheduled there. The SAR. So that's the school activity report. It runs at the beginning of the year, but you need to run it quite often. Run it so you can look at your warnings, look at your errors, do the checklist, look at the frequently asked questions about it. There are things changing with the legislature and what they're saying about class size, so you're going to need to really follow through with all of the information that is required. As far as resources go for SAR, there are QRDs on the SAR user guide itself, generating the report, and there's also older presentations and recorded webinars. So there, the specific links are found under the speaker notes, but you can find them under ncsys/documents/schoolinfo, and the other is under ncsys.org/presentations or /recordings. There's a lot of different pieces about that, or just come to the webinar on the 14th or the 5th. So still in September, stuff to do. You don't get out of doing anything. September's the beginning of your work. Continuing your data entry. So this is going to include entering 504 data, entering other accommodations, and just so happens we have an accommodations webinar scheduled for September 20th from 11 to 12. So Amanda Danks is going to be sitting with me on that. So look at your 504 kids, look at your LEP accommodations, definitely enter your ALP students, and check your EC data. So definitely we need to look at it based on the SAR class size report. We know that even though PowerSchool may not be the authoritative source, you definitely need to have the EC data in PowerSchool for their SAR purposes. So check that EC data. Also in September, you have to start entering your incidents. School has started. We know we can't get out without having some issues. So make sure you're starting to enter those incidents. You don't want to have those pile up as well. Continuing your dropout reporting, the common follow-up. So that kind of starts, you can start looking at that in September. The CFU, I don't have an exact date for that, but start looking at it in September. CRDC, I know it doesn't run this year, but it's a recurring thing every other year. So it's a good time in the September timeframe to start running it and validating that data. So like I said, we're not doing it this year, but next year when we run it, we're gathering it based on this year's data. So you should be looking at this year's data from the CRD standpoint, CRDC, even though you're not going to grab it until next year. And at the bottom just kind of reminds you that the EC data has to be in PowerSchool. And if you're looking at the state dropout reports, look at your W-2s, students, to make sure all the withdrawals and stuff are entered correctly. We made it out of September. Getting into October, all of a sudden that means end of term for some places, for some schools. Prepare for the end of term. I don't have that webinar yet, but that will be coming soon. Definitely have to check your final grade setup. If you're using PowerTeacher Gradebook, the old gradebook, check a few of those to make sure stuff is working and it syncs back and forth. If you're using PowerTeacher Pro, there really is not a report available yet as of today for checking to see if all the teachers are done entering their grades so report cards can run. I believe it's coming in 11, and we're still having 11 in the QA stages, so it is coming. So in the meantime, you're just going to be a little more diligent in the communication, which is what that next box is. Communicate a lot about when your deadlines are, what you guys expect for teachers when they're submitting their grades. If you don't want them to use INC as a final grade, make sure that's communicated to your teachers. Train and review the grade submission process. So if you need to do that, make sure you give that information to them so they can have those processes and policies in place. So once the teachers do their side, they enter their grades, we need to do is permanently store those grades. We need to put them into historical. So there is a QRD on permanently storing grades. And there's also one on running a report card from the North Carolina report card. So if you have your own, I don't have anything to help you with that part. There is something called an ACS document. And this is not a North Carolina document. This is one that was written by Anson County. And Debbie is so nice. She's willing to share that. So she has it in the October time frame. But she said that if anyone wants to look at it and use it as another checklist, that she's willing to share that with us.
Absolutely. It's just something that I created for my data managers just to help them. And it's the document's called End of Term, and it covers the quarters, it covers the semester, it covers the end of the year. And it's basically just a checklist and some how-tos and what-tos and that kind of thing. I'm happy to share. You can take it and tweak it to meet the needs of your district, because your district may be doing things a little bit differently. But just send me an email, and I will be glad to forward that to you.
Perfect. And her email is on that front page, and I'll make sure we get it back toward the end of the session. Okay, so permanently store those grades. Put them in historical. Some of the links under the speaker notes takes you to the permanently stored grades QRD. Talks about the QRD for NC report cards. And there's also a PowerPoint on end of term. All of those pieces are under the speaker notes within the PowerPoint. What we have in Power Teacher Pro this year coming out is the ability to push out some gradebook calculations set up from the district level so that the teachers at the Power Teacher Pro gradebook level doesn't have to do that setup. We can set it up at the district level, push it, and lock it. And we can definitely give more information to those cohort 1 folks, and the rest of us will get the rest of that training sometime this coming year. All right, so that's part of end of term. So that first end of term starts in October. Still in October, this stuff does not go away. Just a reminder that you should keep updating your 504 students, keep updating your accommodations, whether it's for LEP, and especially in October, your transitory and your impairment students. Make sure that the nurse has the immunizations and all that stuff is being kept up to snuff. Even though some of this stuff is not your direct responsibility, make sure you have the right communication tools in place to talk to the people that need to help make that data happen. The next box is historical test audits. You know, there are sometimes a test score is missing. So you may just need to find out where maybe the kid was absent, where they didn't take it, it's just human error, whatever the case may be. Look at those historical tests. Audit your discipline data. Definitely thing you need to do as time goes on. So in October, we should be running that state discipline report. Run it often. You need to make sure explicitly, as a very good example, the law enforcement, the weapon, the hearing, and the final action, what all those pieces are in place for each of those incidents.
Also victims, and that's something we need to add to that list. I just find that these are areas in my report that data is often missing, and so if you check it as you go through the year, it's not so massive to have to correct when you get to the time to submit it at the end of the year. So right. Victim is often left off.
Okay, yeah, we'll have to add that. Yeah. Okay. So, and we will update this PowerPoint. The good thing is it is a bit.ly. It is in Google Slides. So as soon as we touch it, you'll all have it. So I know we're not going to give that the discipline data till the end of the year, but we are starting to track it, keep it up to date month to month. Alrighty. Attendance tracking. If you're using the attendance tracking process, it's a touch different than just the normal regular attendance daily meeting stuff goes. So there's information on how to use the tracking and notification area. That there's a presentation on it, and it's on NCSIS under Documents / Presentations, and it will show you how to work with the attendance tracking notification piece. Look at it there. You need to process that timely. You need to create the letters, run those letters. Let's see, in October. So by October now, the picture people have come in, they've taken the kids' photos, and now is a good time to import those photos into PowerSchool if your school chooses to do so. So every photo company in order to get it into PowerSchool, it's going to require a zip file that has all the photos on it, and it's going to require a text file that has the link between the student number and the photo ID, so we can match the kid with the photo. The actual process may differ depending on what company you use, but they're all happy to help us with that import process. But that usually happens in the October timeframe. All right. You guys still awake? We got 15 people now. I haven't seen one question. Oh, At least someone raised their hand. Thanks. At least I know you're there. Perfect. Okay, still in October. We're talking about state reports. So in October, we're going to look at the PMR month 2, so PMR 2. And also included with that is the GRS. That is the, all of a sudden I'm losing all of my information that I have in my head. It is the
graduate. Oh, no, the
GRS.
grade, race, and sex.
Grade, race, and sex.
Yes.
For some reason, I got the R and I couldn't get it out. It was on the tip of my tongue. Okay, so that's going to be in October. Rerun your SIRs to validate the data. Rerun your CRDCs, and this is stuff you should be doing month to month so that you're keeping a good handle on that information. Okay, we're definitely in the fall. We're into November. It's not snowing yet, so we're good. State reports, fall AIG. We are going to have a fall AIG webinar. It's already been scheduled. So I believe that's Stephanie, I'm going to say her name wrong, Cyrus? Anyway, the fall AIG person and I together are going to be sitting in on October 26th from 10 to 12. In November, we're also going to deal with SIR data collection. I got to move my little mouse. There we go. The dropout data final collection, and if we're in CRDC, you're going to rerun and continue to validate that data and the fall AIG stuff that's going to happen. So this is information that if we have been keeping track of it in July, August, September, and October, that we should be pretty good by November. In December. So in addition to all of the data stuff that we're still working with, the state reports in December is the CRDC. We're going to validate it still, and I think we need to move this SIR. That's got to go back, right?
It does. At the time this was created, we did submit in December, but we received communication last week. I believe the submission date for this year is November 15th, I think.
Yeah, I think we can move that back into November. So the final SIR, the submission status needs to go back one more month. So we will edit this slide as well. Keep looking at your historical test dates, scores. And we're in December, we're in month 3, so do your PMR 3. And don't forget, if you're doing PMR 3, you're going to export and save that summary and that detail info. Okay, happy holidays, we're in December. A little bit into January. So CRDC, as far as state reports go, there's a part 1 and there's a part 2 that's finalized in the early January timeframe. We're also now talking about end of semester. So stuff is happening. So in order to prep for that, obviously it varies a little bit date by school, by LEA. Check that final grade setup. By now it should be okay, but good thing to do. You need to make sure that your semester 2 is ready to be utilized, so that's a good time to check that. The Power Teacher, whether it's Power Teacher Gradebook or Power Teacher Pro, check a few of those, view only, check those gradebooks, take a look at them. This is a big communication time because not only is it the end of a marking period, it's the end of a semester, so it could be end of a course for a lot of classes. So that kind of information may need different kind of deadlines and expectations. So make sure you have that information, give those deadlines, dates to your teachers, any kind of process they need. You've seen this before in the earlier marking period. Store the grades. But now there's another little checklist, and we sometimes forget this, so this is a good one to have. At the high school, you're going to do another store grade. This time you're going to store the A1 for your athletic eligibility. So make sure that that is part of your to-do list in your end-of-term responsibilities. And now we also need to look at the repeated course for any kind of grade suppression or credit recovery or any of the above pieces. Documents for that, always some kind of a document. This is found under Documents, Student Info, QRD, Grade Suppression. There is also some stuff on the CRDC. Make sure that stuff is correct. And if it is a submission year, make sure that happens. The box that I've written in with the red box at the top says manually enter FTE teacher absences as necessary. It's just kind of some things that sometimes gets forgotten. So we'll kind of throw it there for you. Definitely change that FTE for teachers as required. And we got to run report cards. So we're at that time in January where report cards gets to get run. How are we doing?
We're doing good.
Are you cold? We're in January.
Oh, yes.
All right.
We haven't had a snow day yet.
All right. We're in North Carolina. We better not have a snow day. Okay. After your grades are stored, so this is the middle of your year, we're going to run our mid-year transcripts. So look, definitely is the time to look for any problems with your GPA. Look at your class rank, look at honor roll, look at your mid-year grads, your early graduates. Check those requirements. Make sure the withdrawal dates are correct. Make sure your end of the semester reports are run. You have to run your failures. You have to run some honor roll stuff. Whatever you do at the end of a semester, stuff is happening. So hopefully this will give you a good checklist of kind of, oh yeah, I need to do that kind of thing. Couple different PDFs we listed here as links. One's for early grads and one's for mid-year grads. Even though it's dated 2014, the process is still going to be the same for us. Darn, we're still in January. Okay. These are the same prep stuff, only now we're going to talk about scheduling. I know, it's only January. This is when you really should be starting. Those folks that started scheduling in end of July and beginning of August, you guys should be looking at this PowerPoint. You start the process in January, if at all possible. You don't have to do a whole lot, but as you do, if you do a little bit now in January, as time goes on, you won't have all of that last minute stuff to do.
The most important thing in January is to start the conversation with the powers to be. You know, most of us aren't making those decisions, but you've got to remind them it's time to start thinking about those decisions, because that's not where they're living right at the moment. So you need to encourage them to get around the table and let's make the decisions as to what courses we're going to offer next year. Are we going to make major changes in the schedule next year? You know, all those decisions have to be made by the administration before the data managers, the coordinators, the counselors can begin the actual work to start building the schedule.
That's true. I'm kind of preaching to the choir, aren't I?
Right.
Right.
It's usually not us.
It's it really isn't us. You're totally correct. So if you can get some FaceTime with them, that's a good time to start that happening. Look at the Build and Load workshop workbooks. They don't change a lot, so it should be a good thing to kind of get the ball rolling. Start trying to schedule dates of when you're going, and look at the scheduling dates for your elementary, middle, and high. Determine any course changes like Debbie was talking about. I would also start thinking about maybe talking them into using the online course request, because obviously that's something that is a requirement for us to start our next year scheduling process. And guess what? We have a whole page in NCSYS on the courses. So I think I mentioned it before. So under ncsys.org/courses, those are all of your valid course numbers for each of the different school years. So that's a place for you to grab some information about the courses when you talk with your administrators. Decide whether you want to keep the master schedule and just tweak it, talk about changing to a block schedule. Definitely time in January to start that process. So while that's going on, we still have day-to-day stuff happening. So now we're into PMR 4, the 4th month. So we're going to run it in January, save and export that data. We're still doing some scheduling, only maybe we'll call it pre-scheduling. There are steps in that load and build books. If you want to take a look at it, set up your next school year. Set those years and terms up. Move your kids, and it really shouldn't say move. It should say take the student, make sure they have a next school and a next grade level data. I don't want to say move kids because it sounds like we're actually getting rid of them now, and we're not. So we just want to make sure that all your kids have the next school that they're going to go to and the next grade level that they're going to. And you can use the student field value to make that happen. One of the fields that we are dealing with is sched_next year grade. That's one of the fields. So we're going to use mass updating to make that happen. Good time to start that process is still in January. Some notes that I stuck at the bottom is talking about withdrawals and enrollments. When you are withdrawing a student, they need to go to another school, another LEA, anything like that. You need to know what that process is. When you get ready to get rid of a student, to transfer a student out, you need to clear that scheduling setup screen. So that scheduling setup page needs to get emptied. The student schedule needs to get emptied, so to speak, so that when you transfer them out, the other incoming school can grab that kid and do the transfer student record process to bring that data in. So that's just a withdrawal thing. I'm not sure why I threw it here in January, but it's a good note to have. If you are the incoming school, the student you're getting the student, make sure that when you get the student, you are going to update that scheduling setup screen. And basically what that scheduling setup screen is the next school, the next grade level, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of why we have it in the January.
It is. And you have a lot of school systems who really are well into scheduling by this point.
That's true. There are people that start, and you really kind of, it's a good idea too. Okay, so those are withdrawals and enrollments as far as kids and making sure that scheduling setup page is up to snuff. Still cold, still in January. We're looking at scheduling setup. So we're still working in next year's stuff, 18-19 if you can believe it, but day-to-day stuff is still happening. So in our Power Scheduler side of the world, our little bubble, you can start doing the automatic scheduler setup where you're defining your next years and terms and the number of days and the number of periods in your days. Start doing your teacher assignments if you know them. And this is where the decisions need to start to get made, whether you're going to do a build and a load, you're going to build a brand new schedule, or are you just going to copy the master schedule as it was the current year, and then just load the kids in for the new year. You need to make sure the courses are available. So just because the courses say they can exist in the 18-19 school year, you have to make sure they're available for use at your school for that upcoming year. Copy your master schedule if you're going to do that, if you're just loading. Create your course request pages. I really like the online course request. So if you have the ability, if you haven't used it before, think about it, talk to people about it, create those pages. And if you're not going to, then now is the time to start getting those forms together talk with the student and the parent or the counselor or whatever it's going to be to make that happen. So that also, all that stuff is in January, lots of stuff to do. One thing I put here is in our little red box is keep on the lookout for scheduling sessions. So we're not going to have anything called symposium this year, but we do have CCSE. And that's, I wonder if it's CCSE or CCES. I think my dyslexia has kicked in. I think it's CCES. So I think I have that written wrong. But it's going to be where we are combining. So symposium, home-based symposium, is combining with collaborative, blah, 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 blah. Collaborative
achievement, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, we are combining. So we are going to have one big old time in March. Still going to be in Greensboro. It's going to be in March. We're going to look at the same kind of information that we presented last year. We're going to try and have just as good or better stuff, only it's going to be in March, still in Greensboro. Look for those build and load and scheduling sessions there. Look for some regional trainings. We have some budget cuts. I'm not quite sure how it's going to work out for us, but we will try and make sure you have enough help as time goes on. But this is the time frame that we're looking. And always look at your webinars and presentations. So this is still January time frame, but our CCES, I believe, is going to happen in March. Finally, we got out of January. We're into February. Doesn't look like a lot, but it still is tedious work. We're now into month 5, so we're doing PMR 5. Export and save that data. On the scheduling side of the world, still work with those teacher assignments. That is not, I mean, especially if you're a big school, that's going to take a lot of time. Set up your courses and any kind of restraints, any kind of relationships that you want to build. It really does help if you do it piecemeal, little by little. I finally have someone saying something. This is awesome. Hopefully less scary snow threats in March. Well, I don't know, we'll see. I can't promise that. I'm from upstate New York. We get snow in April and May, so I can't promise that.
It snows every year historically, it has snowed at some point every year for symposium. So maybe March will be the game changer.
Okay, so there we go. Compared to February, symposium always has snow, right? I just heard that. So my first symposium was last year, so I enjoyed myself immensely. It was good. All righty, I used the wrong button.
Hopefully we won't be dealing with Hurricane Irma or her sister.
Oh, heck no.
That's getting scary.
It is. Okay, so it wasn't a lot going on in February, so sure. Heading into March, month 6, PMR 6, export and save that data. Sounds a little repetitive, huh? Now we're going to start the spring. So review of the AIG student status for the spring head count. Still at the end, now we're end of a term again. So check that final grade, look at the grade books, communicate all that information to your teachers, make sure they have done their grades so you can store the grades so you can run report cards. All right, Wow, that was quick. March was quick.
I know, March is good.
Yeah. Okay, April. April showers. Here we go. Month 7, PMR 7, export and save. Course requests get completed. So now we're still talking about scheduling. We're thinking more and more about next year's stuff. Whether you did the course request by hand, whether you did it online, whether you used a spreadsheet, whether it's all in the counselor's heads, those course requests need to be completed. Begin building or loading or both your schedule. You actually can start working in the next year's schedule. So yeah, people actually do that at this point. Load in your students if you're at the point where you can. It's nice to have an April. Not a lot of people have that done in April yet.
At this point in the year, we usually have them loaded, and we're literally going in and trying to look at the ones that don't have a complete schedule. I mean, we're well into it.
God bless you. That's awesome.
We try to be.
Yeah. So if you can get to this point in April, it's a very good timeline. You're still looking at historical tests. Make sure that there isn't stuff missing. And we have to approve the AIG. So that's done in April. May. Oh my gosh. End of school is happening. We're getting close. May in PowerSchool. Keep on the lookout. We will be doing those end of year webinars. So this is, it's good. We did 3 last year and we heard that it was a good thing. We should keep doing that. So we're going to keep that on our radar. PMR 8, that's happening. Export and save that data. GDVR, we have a new GDVR business owners for right now. Right now it is Rosalind Galloway and Doris Kitts together. So they're going to be looking at that graduation data. So this is May. Start running and validating those dates. Look at those kids. Any kind of evaluations that need to get looked at. Get a list of any overrides. Just that's got to start happening in that time frame. Got to happen. Work with your counselors. That's, you know, you guys, it's all about communication. Just have to work together. Working together. Work with your CTE staff. Still in May. This is part of our the prep, some of the other additional tasks that we have to do. Finalize your schedule. So in addition to your day-to-day and end of school stuff, we still have to deal with that power scheduler. Do we have our next year ready yet? Run those scheduler validation reports. This is May. You definitely need to start looking at that. There's EOI prep. There's EOI data validations that can get run. There is a whole ton of documents. And here it is, I'm showing it again, www.ncsys.org/EOI. There's a whole page devoted to end-of-year documents. Run all those validations. The CTE completer report, that's where your communication with your CTE staff will help. Test audits. Mass align, I'm just going to make up words. All right. Mass assign 9th grade entry date to the current 8th grade. So Debbie alluded to this a lot earlier in our PowerSchool year, but when you have your 8th graders, mass assign their next year, their 9th grade entry date into that field. Quick and easy, mass assign a statement that will go, and the only ones you need to fix or to modify would be the ones that are not going to be promoted, those retained 8th graders. It's a good time to do that. May is a great time to have that happen. So that's on our checklist. We're in June. Oh.
It seems like we were just there.
May has come and gone. School is ending. Our kids are graduating. Okay, end of term, end of year, not just end of term and end of year. Another final check of the grading. Look at your grade books. This time we're doing a lot of other stuff as well. Not just a regular communication at the end of term to your teachers, but make sure we have everything for the end of year happening. When you're giving them the submission process to submit their grades, make sure that credits are in place, all of those little pieces that you might forget. Permanently store those grades and make sure the teachers have done their thing so you can store the grades. A good time right here is at the high schools, make sure you do a second store and store your A2 grades for your athletic eligibility for that fall season.
And I tell my data managers that the A2 for athletic eligibility to wait just prior to EOY, because you always have grade changes. You've got kids that may, have taken a summer school course right at the end of school. There's just lots of reasons why grades change. So just to make sure that it doesn't impact a student in playing fall sports, I tell them to wait to right before EOY. That way all the grade changes are done. Those grades are history, and that's it. And then they store that A2. Perfect.
So yeah, maybe we should just, we'll put that in there, just before EOY. That's very good, good stuff. This is the end of the year. We need to look at some repeated course. Maybe it's a grade suppression, maybe it's credit recovery. Look at that QRD. There's lots of QRDs regarding that specific information. Run your report cards. This is a really good suggestion, and I've always included that in my trainings, is at the end of, probably should have said it at end of each term, but whenever I run report cards, I always save an electronic copy of those report cards. It's just a good thing. You know what you've sent out, you know what was printed, you have the electronic copy to go back and take a look. It's just a good suggestion. So that's June. Holy cow, right? So that is the kind of the beginning of June. So as we continue with June, we've talked about storing those grades and running those report cards. We need to look at our seniors and the graduate students, make sure that we have the diploma issue date. I know that we had some issues with that issue date this year, all that kind of stuff.
Just be careful when you populate that.
Definitely. It can be done in mass. It doesn't have to be a hard process, but definitely they get the issue date. So follow that process as it's documented. I think that is emphasis as well.
It is noted, and most of you probably are aware, but just in case you're not, what happens with that, when that's populated, it sets off a trigger so that CFNC 10 days later, transcripts are automatically going to be generated. And so you don't want to do it until all your grades everything's final. You don't want to do it until you know there's not going to be any more changes for your seniors, especially because those transcripts are going to be generated and they're going to be going out to the various colleges.
That's right. That was a big miscommunication this year, correct. So you run the report cards for the full year, definitely semester and full year because they both kind of end at the same kind of time, same thing. Spot check for issues. So you're going to look at your GPA now. You're going to look at your class rank. You're going to look at an honor roll. Make sure you're entering any awards that you track. The valedictorian, your salutatorian, on any other kind of awards that you give out, and not just for seniors. Finalize your transcripts. So probably we should put that diploma issue date right next to the finalize the transcripts, because we're not going to, they're going to automatically go, like she said, in that 10-day time frame. We do have a best practice is to print those transcripts just prior to end of year. And it's basically just because everything Debbie has said. There's a lot of changes that go on and little fixing of things right up until that point in time. So that really is just a best practice that we've put into place. When you file, when you print the transcript, you're going to file a copy of that in the TUME folder, definitely for those seniors. Don't forget to enter any of your students that are going to be retained. All that stuff happens before end of year. And don't forget our charters before your end of year. Make sure the kids that are leaving your building, the highest grade level, they get put into that other program school so they can have the end of year done properly for them. Let's talk about state reports in June. So our PMR 9. So we're going to run PMR 9. We're going to export and save that data just like I did every other month. This is when the GDVR gets finalized. So that graduation data, any overrides they did happen in the system. Export and save all of your GDVR reports. That's a very good option as well. It's a very good thing to remember to do. The discipline report is now due, the ALP report, and once you have them, that bottom box, export and save all of those reports. It's just a place. It's just a bucket. It's not going to take up any more space in your room. It's just electronically we're keeping those. Some of the notes that we stuck at the bottom. The PMR will generate for all the months revised, if they've been revised. The discipline report should be audited frequently during the year. So if we've done that during the year, we have to have it done for now when we turn it in June because the legislature looks at it. It's in the district report card. It's in the school report cards. So we definitely have to have all that discipline stuff ready. And you definitely don't want to wait until June to start putting that together. How did we do? Did you make it through June?
Thank goodness.
Well, we didn't do end of year yet.
Yeah.
Okay. So
gotta hit that button.
We do. Oh, hitting that button. It was a fun thing to do. So now how do we prepare for hitting that button? How do we prepare for end of year? So besides going to the webinars, you're going to export and save all your reports. Make sure AIG has been taken care of. Look at all your special programs, whether they need exit dates, if they have to require an exit every year, make sure that stuff is done. So look at all your special programs. Make sure your PMR 9 and your PMR 1 and 2. Those are the three most important ones to make sure are run and are accurate. Historical marks, make sure that all of them were stored properly so you have all of your historical grades. And then you need to also commit your schedule. So you did all this work, you finalized your year, you finished your grades, the teachers put their grades in, you stored the grades, you ran report cards, you ran your transcripts, you ran your state reports. Everything is really done. If you are done 2 weeks before end of year happens, you don't have to wait until the day before to commit your schedule. If you have everything completed for your school, you can then commit your schedule. Because that does take time because there's validations that take place during that commit process. So you don't have to wait until the day before EOY to commit. If everything else is done, you can commit a few days, a week, or whatever before EOY.
We try. Our goal is to submit at least 3 to 4 days prior to EOY because you never know when you might run across an issue that you may have to get the help desk to help you with. So that gives you some time in between there. One thing to remember with the commit process, though, is once you've committed, you do not go in and make any changes until after EOI, then you're in the new school year.
Then you're in live, right. So committing your schedule. We're 3 or 4 or 5 days out. We've committed our schedule. Our school year is ended. So what else do you do between then and when you leave? Lots of stuff, okay? Make sure that you have any report that you can think of. Make sure you have saved it. Make sure you have run it. You've exported it. You've done what you needed to it, especially like attendance, because anything attendance-wise, once the year ends, you can't go back and rerun. So make sure you're running all of those. If you're going to put an attendance report for a full year for your students in their folders, you run those kinds of things. I would definitely do an electronic copy of everything of that as well. Look at your EOI documents. They are great as far as those checklists are concerned. There's a pre-EOI checklist. There is what to do during EOI, and then there's a post-EOI. So there's all that stuff is there for us and in that EOI page on NC6. That is preparing for our end of year. So I think we've hit every month.
We have covered the year.
We did. We started in July.
We're ready to start over and do it again.
Oh, no, I'm not quite yet. So what happens every month? So regardless of whether it's October or March, what do you do monthly? Well, you update your student data. You do your day-to-day stuff. And that includes attendance. That includes any AIG. It includes any of your other special programs, enrolling students, withdrawing students, transferring them out. Obviously, looking at grades, running progress reports if you need to, look at historical grades for new students coming in. You may have to do some historical grade entry, make sure the immunization. So you're doing all of that student data. The biggest thing, I think, is the bottom one. Run some of those validation reports to find your missing data. Make sure you're looking at your discipline stuff, looking at your attendance, and looking at those enrollments. School enrollment audits, section enrollment audits. Just kind of do that. I would do that stuff monthly. It definitely helps any data manager, any LEA person, you could be wearing all of those hats. You could be a small charter and have to do all of this stuff yourself.
I tell my data managers that at the end of every 20 days, when they're working on the PMR, do these things. And that way they're doing them routinely, and you're catching the errors and making those corrections as the year progresses, and then they're not piled up at the end of the year.
That's for sure. Check your dates for withdrawal. Check your student contacts. This sounds really funny. I'm one of the helicopter moms, and I do get mail for students that have my address, but don't live, obviously, with me. So just make sure that information is up to snuff. I know I'm preaching to the choir. You don't get the information. How can you fix it if you don't get it? I understand, but do what you can do. Student access accounts, make sure that the portal stuff is available. We'd like to have the parents look at our student information. They're their kids. That's kind of what we have it for. Withdraw and enroll kids, and use all of your power tools. Use everything that we give you in PowerSchool to make that stuff happen. It's not even, gosh, either I talk faster or what, but it's quarter of. It's not even 2 hours yet. Not quite done. I want to talk a little bit. I want to give you guys a chance to ask. And Consuela, you are quite right. If the parents don't tell us, what can we do? I know I'm preaching to the choir. I appreciate that. It was just one of those helicopter mom things that's like, really? So I get you. What kind of resources can I give you? Well, we've given you a ton. And most everything we've given you is found on www.nc-sis.org/default. That is the home page. If you can't find it there, you can go to PowerSource. Now, I'm not quite sure of all of our people if you're able to all get to PowerSource that are on the call. But if you do have a PowerSource account, you know who you are. If you do or you don't, get there. If you need to put in a ticket to the support desk, we're asking that you actually put it in through the portal yourselves instead of calling. We're trying to save the phone calls for the, oh my gosh, my system's down, no one can get in, those kind of urgent calls. If you have a call, if you have a ticket that needs to be escalated, put the ticket in yourself through the portal, because then you can give all of the pertinent detail that is needed in the ticket. You know what you need to say in the ticket, and then call and say, I need that ticket escalated. So if you can put that in the support ticket, that will be a great help. I'm going to give you guys some more chances for questions here. I think I see one. Let's kind of see what it says. Okay. Am I allowed to ask an unrelated question? Well, let's give it a shot. How do I modify the principal's name for our attendance letters? The previous principal's name is printing is the 39 principal field. There must be a field somewhere that has not been updated, but I don't know where to look. Okay, so 39 is the name of the table. So the third, not the name, but the table number. So 39 is correct. I can take a look for you, Hope.
I think it has to be done.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Hope, are you the LEA coordinator? Are you a data manager? If you could give me your LEA number. She's the LEA admin, 291. Okay, so if I can't get to you now, I'll get to you after the call, and then we can walk through that. I could definitely try and help you. I do definitely want to go back and make sure that you get Deborah's name again and her email address if you want that ACS document that helps you through the end of term with all the little checklists that she has given her data managers. I think any information is good information, so ask her for that. My name is Jackie. I'm here at DPI. It's about 10 minutes to 3. Is there any other questions about the type of process we went through? I think it was good that we did month by month, and I'm hoping that you were able to grab the PowerPoint and keep it and utilize it however it's going to best fit your needs at your school or your LEA. Any more questions? Ooh. All right. Would you have any last minute things, Debbie, that you want to?
I don't. I think we covered it.
You did, because you helped create the document.
Well, we lived it. We lived it for many, many, many years.
Yes. All right. Then I am going to stop the recording and then hope if you can stay on for a second. I appreciate this. I'm glad everybody enjoyed our time, and I will get one of these either this morning's or this afternoon's recording posted as soon as possible. Thanks, everyone.